The chamber of the Galactic Council was larger than any stadium on Earth, and filled with the noise of hundreds of alien voices speaking in dozens of strange tones. The air shimmered with the heat of so many bodies packed into one place. Above, glowing banners and alien symbols displayed the main topic of the day. Every species knew why they had come. The future of Earth would be decided here and now. At the center of the circular floor stood Commander Hale, the only human in the room. His hands were locked in silver restraints, and his uniform was torn. From the long journey, round him, on towering platforms, representatives from 712 alien species looked down with cold, unblinking eyes. They had traveled from the farthest corners of the galaxy for this meeting, and none of them had come with mercy in mind, one council speaker. A tall creature with a face like sharpened bone struck the crystal podium with his claw. The sound echoed. Like breaking ice, humanity is dangerous. Humanity is unstable. We all agree, yes? Voices rose in agreement, some hissing, some rumbling, some clicking, like insect wings. Hale stood silently as the words were translated into his ear. He could hear the hatred in their voices, even without knowing their languages. The speaker continued. We gave them a chance to join our unified peace order. They refused. Keep weapons of mass death. They fight even each other. They will bring ruin to all worlds. And so enslavement is the only safe choice. Another alien, a thick-skinned being with glowing yellow eyes, leaned forward. A free humanity will destroy everything we built. Vote now. Remove their freedom before it is too late. Around the chamber, representatives raised their hands, tendrils, claws, or whatever counted as their voting limbs. One by one, the glowing voting panels lit up with green light for yes, red for no.
Oh.
Hal kept his gaze fixed on the center crystal. Above them, refusing to watch the verdict unfold. The lights turned green, faster and faster, until the chamber glowed with one solid color. It was unanimous. 712 votes for yes. Humanity was now property of the Galactic Council. The sentence was not death, but it might as well have been. Hale let out a slow breath and finally looked around the room. He was surrounded by predators in fine clothing. They thought the hunt was over. 2 guards stepped forward, tall insectoid creatures with armor fused to their kitten. They unlocked Hale's restraints from the podium but kept his wrists bound. Together, one jabbed him with a weapon that crackled with blue sparks, forcing him to move toward the exit tunnel. He did not resist. He walked slowly, his boots clicking on the smooth stone floor. The alien audience watched him go, some smirking in ways that only their kind could. Others turning away as if the matter was already finished. Just before the tunnel swallowed him in shadow, Hale glanced at one of the guards beside him and gave a small smile. You have no idea what you've done, he said in a calm, quiet voice. The words made the guard click its mandibles in confusion, but they kept moving outside the chamber. The hallway was colder and dimly lit. The transport bay waited ahead, where a slave ship was ready to carry him to an alien labor world far from home. The guards shoved him forward, but Hale's eyes were not on them. He noticed small blinking lights hidden in the corners of the ceiling. To the guards, they were just part of the council's security system. To Hale, they were a language. He blinked once, twice, then 3 times in a slow rhythm, matching the pattern of the lights. Somewhere far away, across thousands of light years, hidden human operatives would recognize the signal. It meant only one thing. The chain had been locked, and now it was time to break it back in the council chamber. The alien leaders began to speak of other matters, believing the human problem solved. But on the edges of the galaxy, strange data spikes appeared on military monitoring screens. Tiny, sharp bursts of energy, scattered in places that should have been quiet. Technicians from multiple species dismissed them as background interference. No one connected them to the single human who had just been taken away in chains. And so the meeting ended in triumph for the council. No one noticed that their perfect unity had lit a fuse they could not see. Hal boarded the slave ship without a word. The interior smelled of oil and damp metal. Rows of narrow cages lined the walls, most of them empty. A few alien prisoners looked at him with curiosity but said nothing. The guards locked his cage and moved away. Hale sat against the cold wall, his wrists still bound, but his mind was free and moving faster than any starship. He remembered the look on their faces when the vote ended, how sure they were of their control. They believed chains could hold a human spirit. They believed Earth was weak. Hale smiled again in the dark. The council thought they had just ended a threat. What they had really done was unite an enemy unlike anything the galaxy had ever faced. And now, the clock had started ticking. The slave transport drifted through the dark between stars, its engines humming like a slow heartbeat. Commander Hale sat in his narrow cage, wrists still bound, eyes half closed, as if he were resting. In truth, every second his mind was calculating, listening, and watching. The guards, insectoid soldiers with armor grown into their bodies, walked the aisle without glancing at him. They thought he was broken already. The truth was far from it. Near the back of the ship, a maintenance panel gave off a faint flicker. It was a tiny pulse of light, easy to miss, but Hale caught it every time. He adjusted his breathing, tilting his head so the reflection in his eyes could be seen from the panel's hidden sensor. 3 short blinks. 2 long, 3 short again. It was the same signal he had started in the council chamber, now traveling farther than the guards could imagine, thousands of light years away. In the freezing dust of an asteroid belt, a man who was not supposed to exist sat in a mining tunnel with a dull pickaxe. His prison uniform hung loose on his shoulders, and his face was covered in soot. When the faint light of his wrist implant blinked in the same pattern, he stopped mid-swing. He looked at the guard on the far end of the tunnel, then let the pickaxe fall. Slowly, he smiled. Without a word, he gripped the handle and snapped it in half as if it were made of paper. The next moment, the guard's body hit the ground, throat crushed, and alarms began to wail. Farther still, on the outer rings of a gas giant, a woman, scrubbing the floor of an alien military station, froze when her cleaning drone projected the signal into the shadows. She rose to her feet, her eyes cold and sharp, and walked away without asking permission. The drone kept scrubbing. The guards never noticed she was going back on the slave transport. Hale leaned against the bars as if bored, but his heart was steady and calm. He knew the chain had started breaking. Hidden agents, sleeper soldiers, people the galaxy had forgotten were human, were waking. Some were prisoners in deep mines, others were working in alien factories, some were lost and remote. Colonies where no council ship had visited in years. All of them had been waiting for one thing: the signal. The aliens thought they had scattered humanity into harmless pieces. What they had really done was hide weapons in every corner of the galaxy. One by one, those weapons were moving. Into place in the galactic capital, far from Hale's ship, Council aide entered the private quarters of a senior member with a report. He found the room empty. No signs of a struggle, no broken locks, no sounds. The aide called security. They searched the entire building. Nothing. The council member was simply gone, as if they had stepped out of existence, on another world. A trade governor stepped into his personal shuttle, only for the shuttle to drift back into the port 3 hours later with its seats empty and the controls still active. Whispers began to spread, but no one dared to say the word human out loud. It was still unthinkable that an enslaved species could touch the heart of the council's power. But the disappearances continued, silent and without witnesses, and the slave ship. The insectoid guard nearest Hale stopped in mid-step and tilted its head. Somewhere deep in the ship's systems, a faint scraping sound was coming from the maintenance ducts. The guard turned to investigate, but the sound stopped. When it looked back, Hale was sitting exactly as before, his eyes half closed. But in the darkness above the cages, a shadow shifted, crawling silently along the ceiling. It wasn't human, not exactly. The shape was too long, the limbs too jointed, the eyes glowing faintly red. It paused directly over Hale's cage, and in that instant Hale looked up and met its gaze. No words were exchanged. The creature moved on, vanishing into the ducts again hours later. The transport passed into the orbit of a barren labor world. The guards began preparing the prisoners for unloading. Hale's restraints were checked twice. They didn't realize that in another sector, 3 council supply convoys had just vanished from their planned routes. The crews didn't send distress calls. Ships didn't explode. They simply disappeared into the void, and every trace of their cargo went with them. The council believed humanity had been defeated. Hale knew they had just started the first phase of the war. And in the quiet, as the slave ship descended toward the planet, he let himself smile once more. Because the aliens still didn't understand that chains mean nothing to those who know how to break them. The labor world hung in the void like a dead stone, its surface a patchwork of gray dust and jagged mountains. The slave transport cut through the thin atmosphere and landed on a cracked platform surrounded by towering guard towers.
Commander.
Hale stepped out of the ship, under the watch of insectoid soldiers armed with long shock spears. The air smelled of metal and ash, and a cold wind bit at his skin. Prisoners shuffled in long lines toward the processing gates, their heads down, chains clinking with each step. Hale moved with them, but his eyes scanned the landscape. He wasn't looking for escape routes, he was looking for something far more important. The labor world was just another part of the council's machine, but he knew somewhere deep under the surface. There were things the council had hidden even from itself in the council's core worlds. Rumors had begun to spread. Entire colonies were losing contact. Supply lines were being cut with no explanation. Some council members whispered that perhaps humanity had hidden allies, but the senior leaders dismissed it as fear-mongering. Still, a small team of alien scientists was ordered to investigate something strange they had discovered months earlier. Vaults on the dark side of Earth's moon. These vaults were not alien in origin. They were built by humans long before the council had arrived. Their walls were made of a strange alloy no known technology could cut. Records showed that even human governments had forbidden opening them. But now, with humanity enslaved and scattered, the council decided it was safe to take a look. The scientists worked under heavy guard. They cut through the first barrier with plasma drills, which took nearly an entire day. When the last piece fell away, they found a long tunnel stretching into darkness. The walls were marked with deep, deliberate scratches that looked almost like writing, but in no language anyone recognized. The air that escaped was cold and smelled faintly of iron. One of the scientists stepped forward, her translator unit. Clicking nervously, "There's something moving," she said. A low vibration began under their feet, too faint to be a machine, too steady to be wind. Lights flickered. Somewhere in the blackness, something exhaled. It was slow and deep, like a sleeper waking after a very long time back on the labor world. Hale was placed in a work group tasked with moving heavier from the mines to the processing plant. The guards barked orders, but Hale's attention was fixed on the sky. It was almost the right time. In the mine tunnels, the alien workers talked in hushed tones about strange disappearances, not of humans, but of their own kind. One alien swore it saw a shadow twice as tall as a man moving silently through the mine shafts. Another claimed the sound of breathing followed them through the dark. Hale didn't ask questions. He already knew what it meant. The vaults were open. The first report reached the council 3 days later. Entire research battleship posted. Near the moon's dark side, was found drifting with no power. Every crew member was gone. The hull was covered in scratches that didn't match any known weapon. And deep inside the ship's walls, sensors picked up faint traces of human DNA, mixed with something else. The report was marked top secret, but even secrets had a way of slipping through cracks. That night, in the labor world's barracks, Hale sat against the wall, pretending to rest. The guard tower's searchlights swept across the yard, catching the pale dust in their beams. Far beyond the fence, on the ridge of a jagged hill, a tall silhouette stood perfectly still. It wasn't shaped like a human or any alien Hale knew. Its limbs were too long, its head tilted at an unnatural angle, and faint red lines glowed across its chest. The figure remained there for almost an hour, unmoving, until the searchlight passed over it again, and it was gone. Hale's lips curved into a faint smile. He didn't need to see where it went. He already knew. The council thought they were in control. They thought humanity's strength was in its armies and ships. They didn't understand that Earth had locked away something far older, far stranger, and far more dangerous than soldiers. And now those things were awake, moving across the stars. Hale lay back against the cold wall, closed his eyes, and waited. The monsters were free, and soon the galaxy would know their names. The first thing the alien fleet noticed when they reached Earth was the silence. No defensive fleets, no energy shields, no human cities glowing on the surface. From orbit, the planet looked abandoned. The oceans were calm, the continents dark, as if humanity had simply vanished. The fleet commander, a scaled creature with black, lidless eyes, sent scout ships down to investigate. They found empty streets, buildings standing without power, and houses with doors left open, as if the people inside had walked out mid-meal and never returned. The commander sent a report to the Galactic Council. Earth is deserted. No one believed it at first. Humanity couldn't just disappear. But every scan came back the same: no human life signs, no warm bodies. Nothing but wind and dust. The council thought it was a trick, so they ordered the fleet to begin occupation anyway. Troops in heavy armor marched through silent cities, placing banners of the unified peace order over government buildings. But the first soldiers began to vanish within hours. One patrol reported movement in the fog. Another claimed to hear footsteps behind them, but when they turned, nothing was there. A squad of 6 was sent to investigate a noise in the old subway tunnels beneath New York. They never came back. The command logs recorded their last transmission breathing sounds. Whispers in their own alien language, then static far from Earth, deep in the shadow of a red dwarf star, human stealth ships moved without lights.
Ow.
They were small, sharp-edged, vessels coated with sensor-absorbing material, invisible to the Council's scanners. These ships didn't engage in open battles. Instead, they struck supply lines, cutting off food and fuel to alien garrisons. Communications hubs went dark. Munition transports never arrived. Entire fleets found themselves stranded in deep space, unable to call for help. The aliens didn't know it yet, but the war wasn't about reclaiming Earth. It was about breaking the Council piece by piece, quietly, until they collapsed from within the Council chambers. Voices were rising. Some species demanded to know how a supposedly enslaved humanity was crippling them without firing a single visible shot. Others still refused to believe humans were behind it. They blamed pirates, rebels, even random space anomalies, anything but the very enemy they had voted to chain. But one council member, a long-faced being with eyes like polished stone, leaned forward and spoke what no one else dared to say. What if humanity wanted this war? What if this was their plan all along? The room went silent. No one wanted to admit the possibility. On the labor world, Hale was moved to a new work camp, deeper underground. The guards thought he was harmless, but they didn't notice how he kept watching the shadows in the tunnels. The strange shapes were appearing more often, now sometimes crawling on the ceilings, sometimes standing motionless in the distance. The prisoners whispered about them, calling them the Tall Ones or the Red Eyes. Hall knew they were neither friend nor foe in the usual sense. They were weapons, and they had been waiting for a long time. The Council had freed them without understanding what they were. Now they hunted in silence, and they never stopped. Once they began above, in orbit over another alien world, an entire garrison went silent in a single night. When reinforcements arrived, they found the base empty, with only faint claw marks on the walls and strange symbols burned into the floors. The Council was losing control faster than they realized. Fleets were stretched thin, supplies were disappearing, soldiers were deserting. Every day, more member worlds sent urgent requests for help. The answer was always the same: no ships available. Hale knew the turning point was close. He could feel it in the tension of the guards, in the way alien officers shouted more than they used to, in the way the nights in the labor camp seemed to last longer than before. The Council had wanted to enslave humanity to make the galaxy safer. All they had really done was bring their enemies together in one moment, one place, in one purpose, and now that purpose was beginning to devour them from the shadows. Whole star systems were starting to go dark, not because of human fleets in open battle, but because something was moving across alien worlds at night. Cities that had stood for centuries were found abandoned in the morning, streets littered with overturned vehicles and doors swinging in the wind. Entire populations were vanishing without a trace. The The council tried to explain it as rebellion, disease, or localized disasters. But their own intelligence reports told a different story. Witnesses few and terrified spoke of enormous shapes, moving between buildings, of red glowing eyes watching from rooftops, of metallic claws dragging across stone. They swore the things didn't come from space, but from the ground itself. Some even whispered that they spoke in human voices in the labor camp. Hale was pulled from the mines by guards and marched to the command building. Inside, a high-ranking alien officer studied him with unblinking yellow eyes. "Your people are doing this," the officer hissed. "We don't know how, but they are. Tell us how to stop it." Hale only smiled. "You can't stop what you don't understand," he said. The officer struck him across the face, but Hale's grin didn't fade. The officer didn't realize that outside the building, beyond the camp fences too tall, jointed figures were already watching, their eyes dim red in the daylight. They stood still as statues, waiting for nightfall across the galaxy. More vaults were opening, some buried in alien deserts, others hidden under ocean floors. Every time one opened, a new kind of creature emerged. Some were as large as ships, moving slowly but unstoppably. Others were small, fast, and able to slip into ventilation ducts or water pipes. All were linked to humanity in some way, though no alien could understand the connection. They carried traces of human DNA, twisted and altered, fused with metal and things older than any known civilization. The council called them beasts. Humanity called them insurance. A week later, the council lost contact with 6 member species in 3 different sectors. Their worlds had been stripped silent, their fleets unmanned, their cities dark. Hal didn't need reports to know what had happened. That night, his cell door slid open without a sound. 2 figures stepped inside, human in shape but armored, in strange, living metal that shimmered in the dim light. One carried a blade that seemed to hum. The other wore a mask marked with a red handprint. Without a word, they cut his restraints and handed him a small device. Hal stepped into the cool night air, the camp alarms still silent. By dawn, the camp was gone. It's not destroyed in fire or battle gone. Buildings stood empty, gates swung open, tools and weapons lay scattered. Of the hundreds of guards and prisoners, not one remained except Hale, standing alone in the center yard. When an alien patrol arrived hours later, they found him waiting. He didn't resist when they aimed their weapons. He just raised his head and said, "Tell your council, they never enslaved humanity. It just made us stronger." Far away, in the council's great chamber, panic was taking root. Every speech was louder than the last, every accusation more desperate, and in the shadows above the chamber's high walls, unseen by any of them, something long and thin crawled slowly along the beams, its claws silent on the metal. It stopped to watch the alien leaders below, and if anyone had been close enough, they would have heard a sound like quiet breathing, the faintest whisper in a human voice. The Galactic Council's final plan was desperate. They gathered what was left of their fleets, thousands of warships from hundreds of species, and set course for Earth. The commanders spoke of ending it in one strike, burning the planet too. Ash, if they had to. The journey was tense, the corridors of their ships filled with whispers about the things that stalked them in the dark. Some ships never even made it to the rendezvous point. Crews reported shadows in the engine rooms. Strange. Knocks on the hull, and voices speaking their names. Then the signals cut off forever when the fleet finally arrived. They saw that Earth was no longer the same world they had once scanned. From orbit, the surface was covered in vast, pulsing structures, black and silver, fused into the land like living cities. They rose from the ground in unnatural shapes, some as tall as mountains, others spreading for miles. They were not built by human hands alone. They breathed, shifted, and glowed with a faint red light, as if something inside them was alive and watching. The commanders ordered scans, but the readings came back unreadable. Too much interference. Too many strange energy signatures as the alien fleets moved into attack formation. Every screen in every ship flickered to life. Face appeared, calm and steady. He wore no uniform now, only dark armor with the mark of a red hand across the chest. "We thought you were ending a threat," he said, his voice echoing in their languages. "You united against us. You gave us a single enemy to focus on. And in doing so, you freed the things we were keeping locked away." Behind him, the structures on Earth began to move. Towers unfolded into limbs. Walls became wings. Shapes that had been part of the landscape rose and stood tall, their red eyes burning through the clouds. The first alien warships opened fire, but their shots splashed harmlessly against shifting black armor. The living warforms struck back, launching into the sky with terrifying speed. Some moved through the air, others through the ground, bursting up beneath ships and tearing them apart from below. The Council's fleet broke formation almost immediately, panic replacing discipline. Ships collided as they fled. Those that stayed were dragged from orbit, their hulls crushed like paper. In the Council chamber light years away, alien leaders watched the battle through live feeds. The footage showed their fleets dying in minutes, their most powerful weapons doing nothing. Then the view shifted to show the first alien homeworld under attack. It wasn't Earth's armies that landed, it was the monsters, the same towering forms that had risen from Earth's surface. They moved through alien streets like predators through tall grass, silent and unstoppable. Hale's voice came again, colder now. "This is not revenge. This is survival. You thought you could cage us, you thought you could tame us, but we are not your slaves. You're the thing you should have feared in the dark." The last surviving warship fled Earth's orbit, its engines burning at full power. No pursuit followed. It didn't need to. Across the galaxy, one by one, worlds would fall, not to human soldiers, but to something far worse, something that had been waiting for centuries for the Council to make this mistake. And now that they were free, they would never stop. Somewhere, on the blackened surface of Earth, Hale stood on the shoulder of one of the living warforms, the red light of its eyes bathing him in a faint glow. He looked out into the stars, and in that moment, every alien leader who saw the broadcast understood. The truth: humanity had not just survived, they had become the nightmare that would haunt the galaxy forever.